Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. My name is Andranina Rajazia. Thank you for joining this event, How Women Lead. It has been organized by the Student Associate Student Government of SBCC. We're basically the voice of students here, working to ensure that all of their opinions, concerns, suggestions are heard. And right now, until April 4th, if you are a SBCC student, you can apply to one of the 6 elected officer positions, which are the president, the vice president of internal affairs, external affairs, of operations and finance, the student advocate, and the student trust. It is a great opportunity to improve your skills as a leader. There are other requirements to be eligible to apply, and it has been sent by email, but you can also find them on our Instagram, SBCC ASG. So as I said earlier, I'm Andrea Nina, and I was born in Madagascar. I practically lived my whole life in Belgium, and until now, since I am a freshman at SBCC now, and I'm a computer science major. I am myself part of the Associate Student Government as the Commissioner of Accessibility. And today I'm very happy to host this event since, as everyone knows, this month is a very special one. It is the Women's History Month. And at SBCC, we have the chance to be surrounded by so many great and inspiring women leaders, and we want to celebrate that. So we are in presence of 4 women leaders of the SBCC community: the interim superintendent president, Kindred Murillo, the academic senate president, Napoleon, the board of trustees member, Anna Everett, and the president of the Associated Student Government, Kabukapwa Kalombo. Thank you for being here. We need to share and give us the opportunity to learn more about your leadership experience. So yeah, let's get started. Dr. Murillo, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. Would you like to share a little bit of your background with us?
Okay, just a little bit about my background. I'm a non-traditional community college president. I actually came from industry into the community colleges as an adjunct professor. So that was an unusual path for a lot of community college leaders. And I've served as a public official, as a mayor of a community, a council member, and actually worked as a field rep. So I have a little bit of all kinds of experience along with doing consulting work.
Thank you, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing. Dr. Napoleon, thank you for being here with us today. You joined Santa Barbara City College 10 years ago, and that's amazing. Could you also share a little bit of your background with us?
Absolutely, thanks. Let's see. I grew up in Rochester, New York, and I'm the youngest of 5 in my family. And when I went to school, I was the first one in my family to go. And so I didn't have a lot of guidance for how to pick colleges. So I picked the city of Philadelphia, and then I found a college. And so I did my undergraduate education at the University of Sciences in Philadelphia. I majored as a chemistry student, and I have minors in both math and physics. And I graduated in 2005. And then I went to Boston University for my PhD, and I can explain a little bit more about how I got there, and maybe later. And I graduated with my PhD in physical, computational, theoretical chemistry in 2012. And at that time, I was dating my now husband. And we actually, even though he's an engineer and also a PhD student, we met on the cycling team together at Boston University. And he had recently gone to a conference where he met individuals from Santa Barbara at Raytheon, and they offered him a job. And so he came back to Boston and said, do you want to move to Santa Barbara, California with me? And I was finishing up my PhD, and I had no plans to stay in Boston and had no plans about where life would take me next because I was so focused on finishing my degree. And so without really thinking, I said, yeah. And then once I made that decision, I said, oh, what am I going to do there? And so then I started seeking out positions, and I was worried about finding finding something that would fit for me, because I was always very interested in undergraduate education only. And so I knew UCSB was here, and I knew they were a powerhouse in research and things like that, but I also knew that I didn't want to do that. And so when I started learning more about Santa Barbara, I learned about Santa Barbara City College, and I realized that this was my dream scenario, so to speak. And then as I was finishing up my PhD, I was lucky enough that somebody was retiring from Santa Barbara City College, because faculty positions are rarely available. And so the timing was perfect. And I was the lucky one out of, several dozens of hundreds of candidates, however many there were. And so, yeah, I've been here ever since. And that was, like I said, 2012.
Oh yeah, the timing was great. Thank you so much for sharing. Your background is so inspiring, and thank you. Now, Dr. Everett, you worked and still work in a lot of positions involving leadership, such as being the commissioner of the County of Santa Barbara Commission for Women, and you're also an elected trustee at SBCC. Could you share a little bit more of your background with us too?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about being here. So I am also, like Dr. Murillo, a non-traditional student. I am a re-entry student who came back to school after 10 years as a flight attendant with Eastern Airlines. It's now defunct. I am now a retired professor, and our term of art is Professor Emeritus or Emerita. That is a culmination of my 22 years here at UC Santa Barbara as a professor of film and media studies. I did my BA at San Jose State University. I did my master's at UCLA and my PhD at USC. So my first job was at the University of Colorado at Boulder. I was recruited away here, and I have been enjoying it. And as I was contemplating retirement, I got involved in many groups, including the Santa Barbara Women's Political Committee, a non-denominational or nonpartisan group of women political activists. So in addition to my work in the community, I found myself in the position of running for and getting successfully elected as a member of this wonderful board of trustees here at Dynamic Santa Barbara City College. So right now, I guess what I want to say is that listening to Dr. Napoleon, I have one experience I want to share. When I was a flight attendant, I met someone who was helping to start up CNN. And he invited me to come to Atlanta. I was living in Washington, D.C., come to Atlanta and be a part of that. And I said to him, dude, I'm not leaving my good flight attendant job to go to Atlanta for some cable news network thing. So I regret that decision to this day, but I'm really excited about my career right now. So thank you so much for asking me about my background.
I believe she's gonna come back. He's back.
Hi, I don't know what happened. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so that's awesome. Thank you for sharing, Dr. Everett. We're glad that you're with us today. And now the ISG president, Kabukapwa Kalombo, you have been a student at Santa Barbara City College for 3 years now, and you have been more than involved on campus. So Could you share a little bit of your background with us too?
Of course. So my name is Allegra Kabukapa Kalumbo. I'm originally from Democratic Republic of Congo. I was born and raised there for, I think, 14 to 15 years. Then my parents moved to Belgium, and I went to high school there. And my dream with my brother, my older brother, was to come in the US. We just wanted to go and study in the US, and we wanted to be in an English environment. We're lucky enough that our parents were dreamers too, and they always pushed us to follow our dreams. And by the way, my mother is in the audience, so salut maman. She's gonna be happy to hear that. But yeah, so they pushed us to follow our dreams. And we came here with my brother in 2019. We never been in the States before. And our first stop was Santa Barbara City College. Actually, my dad chose it because he loved the scenery, sorry, here. And so we came here as freshmen, as myself, biology major, and he was economics major. And he got transferred to UC Berkeley. And I stayed here for one more year to finish my requirements to go to a pharmacy school where I got accepted. And thanks to Dr. Rian Napoleon, she was the one introducing me to the school I want to go. So yeah, so I came here, and my dream and my goal was to first make sure that people can pronounce my last names, which is not really easy, but thankfully a lot of people actually learn, and I really appreciate that. And the second thing was to make a difference as a minority and get involved as much as I could. And so I started off as part of the ambassadors program, which is a great way for student leaders and just freshmen to get introduced to what is Santa Barbara and how you can host events while having fun and meeting a lot of students. So I started off from going from there, and then I joined the Equity Center for Equity and Social Justice. They were doing food pantry, just giving away free food during the pandemic, and it was not paid. I was not looking for money. I always tell my mom, I don't need that. I just want to help. So that's what I did for the entire summer of 2020. It was a pleasure for me to do that and just meeting a lot of community members. And from there, I worked for the Center for Equity and Social Justice, the Umoja Center. And going from there, I just wanted to be more involved. And that's why I joined the AHG as the president. Actually, I joined as the vice president of internal affairs. And because I was scared to be to apply for the president role, and I won my election, and the president seat was vacant. And I was like, oh my God, maybe this is my shot. And so that's how I joined as the president since September 2021. And it has been such a privilege for me to serve as the president. I learned so much as a young leader, as a woman, and as a woman of color. So yeah, thank you, Nina.
And you have been doing a great job.
Yeah, exactly. You have contributed to a lot of great things here. So yeah, thank you. And as all of the other guest speakers of today, all the things that you all do are so inspiring, and I can't wait to learn more about your experiences. And yeah, so some people are born being leaders, some people are inspired to be so, or some people learning took time. And so in your case, how did you become a leader? Let's start with Dr. Murillo. Could you share a little bit with us about who or what inspired you to be a leader and why?
Thank you. Appreciate that. And thank you again for doing this forum. It's an honor to be here today. So leadership was never anything I aspired to in my younger years. I was very shy in high school, sort of spent my time behind books. And so my main focus when I was in college was actually taking care of my two children. I had children early, and I entered community college. So I was never thinking about leadership. I was thinking about putting food on the table. That was just literally it. And so I was working in a power plant. in probably a little desert community where I was a plant equipment operator. It was one of the best jobs in town, paid $9 an hour back in 1985. And it had benefits. So it worked for me. I could go to college and finish up. And so one night I was on graveyard working on a shift, and my supervisor connected with me. And he basically came in and he kind of handed me this application. He said, "You have to apply for this position." And I went, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "You have to apply for the supervisor's job at SolarOne." And I said, I don't understand. I like what I'm doing. I like my work. You know, I worked in a coal plant. You know, sometimes you shoveled coal, sometimes you didn't. But what I learned in that job was amazing, because by the time I got out of it, I understood electrical theory and everything you can imagine about physics that was involved in making electricity. And he said, "No," he says, "you've got too much potential. You need to do this." And I was like, "Okay, I'll put in, but they're not going to hire a plant equipment operator." Here I am standing with my hard hat, tool belt, and steel toe shoes. And I'll be darned, they hired me. And I think it was because I had learned so much about how you do electricity and what you could do. And so from there, it was, I had supervisors that I was really lucky that they would say, "Oh, there's an opportunity over here. I think you should do this." And I was doing this in an era where women were starting to move into more non-traditional leadership roles. And I'm going to talk about it in a few minutes in one of the other questions you asked. But literally, I was the only woman on an 8-man person crew. And it was a men's world in the electric utility industry. So it was a time of really being inspired by women that you ran into who were really good leaders. And I was lucky in one of my assignments. One of the district managers was Peggy Town, and I was still a supervisor, kind of moving through, trying to make ends meet. And I had lost my daughter in a car accident when she was 14. And you know, you go back to work and you're kind of like, I don't know, I shouldn't be here. I don't know, you know. I remember Peggy Town coming in and sitting in my office, and she goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm okay. I need to be back to work." And the next hour she spent with me was about support, about empathy, about caring. And what I learned from her about being a woman leader was, yeah, you have to set expectations. Yes, you have to get things done, but it's okay to be empathetic and compassionate, because we are in a human experience. And that framed my leadership in a way that when I got to work for Dr. Helen Benjamin in 2008 at Contra Costa Community College District, and I learned that I needed to be someone that closed the equity gaps, who made sure that people who were oppressed had an opportunity and a pathway through college. I could do it by being who I was and being authentic in what I do. And those were two people that really inspired my leadership, that I was never going to be a leader, but I guess here I am.
Wow, that even inspired me as well. And I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. So thank you for sharing. And yeah, Dr. Napoleon, and you, who or what inspired you to be a leader and why?
So I think it's important to start off to say thank you to Allegra for sharing these questions ahead of time. And I mentioned in the email that these questions are really tough. And this one in particular, since I've received the question, I've been thinking, what am I going to, how am I going to answer this? What am I going to say? And I think as I lead up to my answer, I think you'll understand why I struggled with this so much. So I think at first I thought to myself, well, I don't, obviously it's important to acknowledge something Dr. Murillo said, which is, me being a little younger and in a different generation. Obviously, when I grew up, there were women leaders already in place. There were women in traditionally male roles. And so when I grew up and was seeing these women in these places, it was, you know, normal already, right? So I think it's important to acknowledge that that there was women, a lot of women that came before me, some, you know, that are famous and well known, and we, you know, talk about in history classes, and so many nameless women that, you know, just, you know, raised their families and went to work and put food on the table, that and you know, broke down barriers that we'll never know. So my answer, acknowledging all those women, I was really struggling with, because I was like, I don't know who inspired me. Like, there wasn't this exact moment in my life where I thought of myself, oh, leadership is for me, or I'm going to be a leader, or I'm gonna, you know, lean into this, that, or the other. And I think it's just because I just did it a little bit without thinking, and I still do. And I think I was a little even taken aback when Allegra invited me to this panel, because I don't think of myself as a leader, even though I have this really important governing role on campus as like literally the faculty leader, the literally, and I still don't think of myself as a leader, or you know, I just happen to be in this position, but that doesn't necessarily make me a leader. So I was really struggling with this. And so my first answer to this, well, I don't have a specific person or a specific time that inspired me or helped me find my way. But I think therein lies the answer, which is my mom, I think, is the one that led me to where I am now. And so just a really brief background of my family. So my father didn't graduate 7th grade. He went into the military. He met my mom when they were both very young. He was 20, she was 16. And so they started their family then. And so my mom ended up later getting a GED, and my father, not having a lot of education, ended up being a truck driver, and my mom worked in a local gas station in outside of Rochester, New York. And so growing up, my father was gone a lot, and I grew up, you know, kind of in some ways with a single mom, and you know, with the youngest of 5 kids, and things just broke around the house all the time. And she always just did it, right? Just fixed it, just got the ladder out and painted the ceiling, or, you know, Rochester, New York, like literally shoveled the snow and the ice off the garage roof, so our garage roof wouldn't like cave in when there was a snowstorm, or, you know, worked all day and then somehow got me to soccer practice, or the next thing, right? And she just always did it because she had to. And so I think that was my inspiration as I grew up and started taking on leadership roles, especially here in the greater Santa Barbara community, and here at Santa Barbara City College. It's almost this, like, I would say, compulsion of mine to find where things need to be done and then just do them, because they're not getting done and they need to be done. So somebody's got to do it. And instead of waiting around for somebody to do it, you just do it. So, you know, I remember a couple of years ago, after, this feels gratuitous to mention, but I'll mention that I was invited, I was one of the speakers at the Science March a couple of years ago. Marches after Donald Trump was elected was very in vogue at the time. There was lots of marches, the Women's March, the March for Science. And so I was an invited speaker there. And then after my experience there was some discussion of, you know, the Parkland shooting happened in Florida. And I really wanted Santa Barbara to have a March for Our Lives, you know, in opposition of weapons and school shootings and, you know, activism there. And so, and that was supposed to be student led. And I remember when that was first being discussed and it was being planned on a certain day nationwide, it was like, well, who's going to do this in Santa Barbara? Right. And so there was an opportunity where it was just like, let me lean into this. Let me do this. Somebody's got to do it. Like, let me find local student leaders to do this. And so I reached out to UCSB and I pulled people in from Santa Barbara City College and the high school. And it was just like, again, wasn't necessarily this moment of inspiration. It was just like, well, who's going to do it? Somebody's got to do it. I'm going to do it. And then the same thing here at Santa Barbara City College, I would say in terms of the academic senate presidency, I don't think it's any secret that I've been frustrated for a few years. You know, Santa Barbara City College since the last few years and maybe even the last few decades has had, you know, a rough go of things. And we've had some, you know, some very public, you know, things happen. And when those things were happening, it was just another opportunity to be like, we need to clean this up. Let's do that. I want to do this. I want to be involved. And so it wasn't necessarily, you know, this discrete moment in my life that I can point to and say, aha, that was it. That's what inspired me. It was, like I said, it's almost always this compulsion of like, somebody needs to do this. And instead of waiting around for somebody else to do it, I just do it. And I think that I got that from my mom.
Oh yeah, okay, I see. It seems like it's more successions of events that inspired you and not just one moment, one specific moment. But yeah, thank you for sharing with us. So Dr. Everett, could you also share with us who or what inspired you to be a leader and why?
Yes, Dr. Napoleon's point about the question, although seemingly easy, was a little difficult for me to answer as well. So I just want to preface my answer by saying that when I was a flight attendant, I was there for almost a decade. I ended up leaving because I really wanted to go back to school. I loved learning and I loved the life of the mind. So I couldn't do that continuously and remain as a flight attendant even after 9+ years. So I went back to school as a non-traditional student, as I said, first generation college student. And when I was there going back to school at San Jose State, I was trying to figure out what my next career move was going to be. I didn't want to be in a traditional woman's job. I, didn't want to be a teacher, but throughout my career, every job I've had has been a traditional woman's job. I've been a unit clerk at a hospital. I've been a flight attendant, and now I'm a professor. So, life is what happens while you're busy making plans, right? And so this Korean American professor asked me to be his research assistant because he saw I was older and serious. And so that really turned my head about maybe I should give this teaching thing another consideration, because I was torn between either being a lawyer or a diplomat. So I spoke to several women lawyers and they were like, as Dr. Maria was saying, oh, you don't want to do this job. It's a traditional man's job. You have to make compromises. And I was thinking, oh my God, this does not sound like me. So I thought about teaching. And so I went back to school and got my degree in film and media studies. Now, in terms of my inspiration and what really inspired me, I decided that since we're concluding Women's History Month, or Women's Her Story Month, as Professor Rowena Tomanig said yesterday, I want to name a few phenomenal women who inspired me. So I want to begin with the Civil War Union spy and operative and the bravest woman ever, Harriet Tubman, and her Underground Railroad, suffragist and orator extraordinaire, Sojourner Truth, and her famous Seneca Falls speech, Ain't I a Woman? And then there's newspaper owner, journalist, and anti-lynching crusader Ida Bell, or Ida B. Wells, who yesterday must have looked down from heaven and said, it's about time, as President Biden signed the insufferably overdue Emmett Till anti-lynching federal hate crimes law. And then there's Democratic Congresswoman from our state, Barbara Lee, who went from Black Panther to US House of Representatives and has a award-winning documentary out of her life. It's called Barbara Lee, Speaking Truth to Power. I recommend it. And then of course, the Honorable Ketanji Brown Jackson, who persevered. In terms of my own personal leadership journey, I want to name my mom, Lena Everett, who never finished high school, but always believed in me. And then there was UCSB Center for Black Studies Director, Dr. Claudine Michel, who recruited me to fill her position as the director of Black Studies. And that began my administrative leadership career in the academy. And then Commissioner Suzanne Peck nominated me for the County Commission for Women, which began my community leadership career. And then finally, that led to my victory as a proud member, as I said before, of the Board of Trustees. And I wanted to name check all these women because, as I was saying, I stand on the shoulders of women who've accomplished so much. And I did what I did because they did what they did. So it was seeing that my voice and my presence in many rooms where change happens really makes a difference. And all of that and my tribe of busybody, do-gooder, supporter women are what made me decide to take the path of women's leadership.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's really inspiring. And also, I just wanted to point out that we can definitely tell that you're passionate about what you do. And I think that's the goal of everyone, almost everyone, being passionate about what they do in life. And yeah, so thank you for sharing what inspired you. And Kabukapwa Kalumbo, how about you? Who or what inspired you to be a leader and why?
So for me, it's a succession of different women and different people. From when I was younger, when I was back in Congo, I was inspired by my dad because everybody was saying, you look like him. Everything was doing just like him. My dad is a lawyer. So at the time I wanted to be a doctor. And so for me, I was like, okay, he's a lawyer, I'm a doctor. It's not the same, but I was so inspired by him because, you know, in Congo, it's the male are more, I would say, everybody's celebrating men rather than women. And I would never see like a doctor woman. Like, I don't remember having someone, a doctor, you know, in the hospital. And so then when I was growing up, went to high school, my mind changed and I was inspired by my mother. She went to school, she graduated from university in Congo. And for me, she was the smartest. She was so fast in math. She was, wow, she knows how to talk to people. And she is so funny. So she was everything in one person. And she had full ideas. Every time she would come up with something out of nowhere. And so she was the one keeping the house going. And so, yeah, from there, I started just being inspired by her. And then we went to Belgium and same. I was seeing just the fact that she led her life in Congo to go conquer a new country. That was just impressive for me because my dad was going back and forth Congo and Belgium, but she stayed in Belgium. She got integrated. She learned everything. So for me, that was really inspiring. And going from there, I was like, okay, I don't want to become a doctor anymore, but I want to do something different. And I want to travel. So that was the thing. And so I was also like really inspired by all of my teachers. Women teachers were smart. As soon as they were smart, for me, I was like, oh my God, I want to be like them. Because I never really considered myself super smart. And even though I had always good grades, but for some reason, never considered myself smart. So for me, I was inspired by those women, just trying to get good grades and just get involved as much as I could. And I came in Santa Barbara and I met my counselor, Angela Warren, and she was the bus lady. And I was like, I want to be like her. And she is Black and she is phenomenal. She is a good friend. And I wanted to be like her. And so from there, just strive to work harder, get involved, and just be better every time. My goal was to be different every day. And that's why I say it's a succession, because every day I had a new goal and a new person that was really motivating me to go forward. And I have a couple lists, like I have Angela, I have Shelby Arthur. She was a program advisor, I would say, from the ambassador. And then I had Roxanne Byron, part of the Center for Equity and Social Justice. I had Alondra Gonzalez. She is part of the Center for Equity, Social Justice and Equity. And she is also phenomenal. She did everything during COVID, food pantry, sending emails. She did all of that. And I was impressed. How do you do it? I'm dying with my school. How do you do it? How do you manage to do all of that in one day? And so then, yeah, then I met Dr. Murillo. Just talking to her was phenomenal. And just having that chance to get to talk to her, get to learn from her from a proximity, that was also a goal for me, to be passionate about students, about, you know, what you do in life. And I met Ryan. Funny story, I was really intimidated by Ryan. And then we had lunch and everything switched up and I was inspired. And when I learned she did chemistry, I was like, wow, I'm a bio major. I'm passionate about chemistry. And so it's really a succession of different women from my life that really pushed me to keep on going. And to answer the question, how I chose to be or to become a leader was really more about, I want to do better for my little sister. I want her to look at me and say, okay, she's doing that and I can do it too. And also look at my younger cousins back home, just to dream and to be able to say, I can achieve that, because there's so many barriers that we don't see, but they exist and we feel it every day. And so that's why I wanted to become a better leader, and a leader, just a leader. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing. You have powerful different sources of inspiration, and inspiration leads to motivation, consistency, and so many other great things. And I know that one of your goals in life is to make things different, but also to inspire other people. And I can tell you that you inspire a lot of people, including me. And thanks everyone for sharing how you decide to choose the path of being a woman leader. If you, yeah, and now in every career, there are ups and downs, and that's part of the game. And Dr. Murillo, what has been some of the most significant barriers that you encountered in your career, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Okay, thank you. Well, as I noted earlier, I came up during a time when women were starting to really get into the non-traditional fields. I remember one night, again, working in the power plant, I had one of my colleagues come up to me and look at me and tell me, you shouldn't be here. You're stealing a job from a man who's trying to support his kids. Think about that for 2 seconds. Here I am, a single mother with 2 kids, trying to support them. And it was like really demoralizing. It was kind of that thing, well, you're not supposed to be here, you don't belong. And I think sometimes I see that with many of our students in a college. They feel like they don't belong. And we don't often create that sense of belongingness at our colleges where students can connect. So that's how I know that feeling, because being treated that way in a power plant by somebody that I worked with really had an impact on me. It was very demoralizing. And I know I actually cried that night. I can't, not supposed to admit I cried, but I did. And my supervisor looked at me and he said, here's the deal. You're a woman in a non-traditional role. You're going to have to work twice as hard as anybody else to get to the same place. Now, this is real. Okay, I hear you. I'm a hard worker. I can do this. And that was a barrier, in the sense that, you get passed over for promotions and you were just as qualified, had as much education. And so you start doubting yourself and doubting your worthiness. So I would say probably the biggest barrier I had to overcome was myself. I think doing self-work is one of the most critical pieces for an excellent, and I do mean excellent, woman leader. You have to do the deep work, self as instrument, because you cannot affect positive change if you don't understand yourself and you don't understand your motivations and what you're trying to do. And you have to feel worthy doing it. And so that was the barrier for me, that I finally feeling worthy of being someone in the workforce that could actually impact change in a system that wants to resist and make that change stick. It's a barrier, because you can create change, but it'll go back to the way it was, because systems were designed exactly what they do, exactly what they're supposed to do. They're designed this way. And if you're going to change, you have to like push through it. And that is it's a barrier for everybody still. Not only women in non-traditional roles, but women everywhere, and for our BIPOC communities. And I think until we can break through those barriers and we help people learn to do that and break down the barriers, that's what we're supposed to do. As women leaders, we're supposed to break down those barriers because we know what they were like. And so I think it's all about the self-work, understanding who you are, and then really being authentic in your leadership so that you can actually affect change that will stick.
Yeah, feeling worthy is hard, and thank you for the advice. And that's amazing to get to know how you overcame some challenges and handling the pressure of being a woman in the industry. And yeah, thank you for sharing. It's really great and helpful to have some tips from you. And yeah, for you, Dr. Napoleon, what have been some of the most significant barriers you encountered in your career, and how did you overcome them?
Dr. Murillo totally stole my answer, but I have very similar things to say. I think thinking backwards again, just sharing a little bit of my trajectory, especially in my family, the youngest of 5. I didn't know anyone that went to college. I always share that where I come from, the rich people, like the rich kids that I went to school with, they were the teachers' kids, which, in Santa Barbara is kind of funny and cute. But that's where I came from. And so, my parents were not, quote, the rich, we were not rich. And so, college wasn't really anything I was thinking about growing up. My mom started her family very young, and then my sister followed the same route. And so I was, I think when I thought of my life, it was just like in my hometown, and not really going to college and not, being a scientist or anything like that. I was also a dyslexic growing up, but I had undiagnosed dyslexia. And so I just thought I was stupid and bad at school. And I was I was always taken out at lunchtime for the special classes to work on my reading and writing. And that's actually how I ended up as a scientist. And I remember my mom telling me, girls aren't good at math and science. Girls are good at reading and writing. Why aren't you good at reading and writing? And I didn't know. Like it wasn't logical. It didn't make sense to me why my brain didn't understand why boat was spelled B-O-A-T and coat wasn't spelled C-O-T. Like it was very hard for me to do those things. But science was easy. Science, it didn't matter if I could write correctly or not. You know, I was good at science because I remember my 5th grade experiment, the little whirly birds, as like they had different shapes and lengths as you dropped them. Oh, I could observe that and write that down. And then I could, you know, make guesses about what could happen next. And so it was easy and I was good at it. And so as I grew up with that idea of like, I'm not good at these things and I'm good at science. And I was kind of bucking back on that system of like girls, you know, what my mom told me, like girls aren't good at science and math, or girls shouldn't like those things. You know, that route was definitely a barrier. And then same thing, or that mentality was a barrier. Like I shouldn't be good at this. This isn't what I was supposed to do. Or, you know, girls shouldn't be good at this. And then when I got into college, realizing that, you know, if you want to be a scientist, you kind of got to go to college. And so again, I picked Philadelphia. I wound up at University of the Sciences in Allegra. I'm so excited you're going there. It's so awesome. As I ended up there, and then I moved there, moved to Philadelphia and started going to college there. I just did not fit in. Everybody I went to college with, their parents were pharmacists or in the medical field in some way, or doctors or lawyers, and so as, you know, this kind of fish out of water in an undergraduate, I just didn't fit in. And that always weighed on me heavily. And so I just, and I was also paying for myself to go to college. And so I calculated how much every single class cost. My classes cost $22 a class, and I didn't have $22 to lose. So I always went to class because I was like, unless I have $22 to burn, I have to be in class. And so that's actually how I ended up, quote, getting good grades, because I still didn't think that I was smart or capable, right? But I ended up getting good grades by chance because I made sure I was at every class. And so as I went through college, you know, and I saw my advisors, and I liked his lifestyle, and I liked TAing as an undergraduate, and I liked working with other students. I thought, oh, maybe, you know, being a college professor is what I want to do. And that's how I found that. But the barrier was always, but I don't fit into this world, right? Like this world isn't mine. And then the same thing was true, especially when I got into graduate school, and I would say even more, because here I am, Boston University, you know, R1 institution, top 25 college in the country for what I was going for, all of those things, but it didn't feel real, and it didn't feel like I fit in. And I just always felt like sooner or later I'm going to be found out, and they're going to kick me out, and I'm going to be gone. And so, you know, that mentality of like, I don't fit in here has always been one of my biggest barriers for sure. Whether it was, you know, a woman in the sciences going that route, or as, you know, a kid from a family, you know, blue collar family that is now going to college or graduate school, or even now as a professor, that feels very odd to me. And I'll share with you all that it continues to be a really weird or a barrier, not weird, a barrier for me. You know, I sometimes feel like, well, I definitely feel like I don't fit in with my older brothers and sisters who didn't go to college. There's some sibling tension there, right? Because I'm the black sheep in many ways, but one of them is that I went to college. And so there's, you know, a saying from where I come from, lots of places actually, it's like, I got too big for my britches. And so when I am around my siblings, I feel that, you know, we don't have a lot to talk about. It feels like if I try and explain what I do as my job, or even in college, they don't seem interested, or it feels like I'm being very uppity, right? And I'm not, or maybe I am, I don't know. I certainly don't have that intention, but that's how sometimes it lands. But then here in Santa Barbara, I feel like this this kid that shouldn't be here, right? You know, and here I am, academic senate president, professor of chemistry, and none of those things feel like me because I don't speak well, I don't write well, I misspell things, I, you know, don't speak in complete sentences. I think hey is a perfectly reasonable way to start a conversation with somebody. Um, and so, you know, it's like I don't quite fit in here either. And so I think one of the biggest barriers is this just this nagging feeling of I never quite fit in anywhere in these places where I find myself. And then, you know, went, you know, too much for my family and yet not enough for the academic world too. And so I think that that's one of my biggest barriers, just trying to find my way into these spaces. There was a follow-up question, right? Like, how do you overcome them? I think just overcoming them by just like always just keep showing up and just keep doing it and try and find your people. And I think that that's one of the things that has helped me as Senate president is I have people. My friend Ruth Morales, my bestie, you know, working as a woman of color, a Latina in econ, right? And super smart. And, you know, she experiences things differently than I do. And yet there's a lot of similarities. And so just talking through that and processing, and then also like hearing, you know, that you inspire people like, you know, Allegra and I just happened to meet each other, you know, and so here we are, you know, she's going to my college, and so it like changed her life. And so, you know, you find, I don't know, what's the word, you know, gratitude in that. And so that helps you keep going when it really doesn't feel like you should or like you can't.
Thank you so much for sharing and being so honest. Yeah, thank you so much. And now, Dr. Everett, would you like to share with us some of the barriers you had to face and overcome in your career?
Yes, thank you. Well, I think for me, well, first of all, I really have so appreciated and enjoyed the stories of Dr. Murillo and Dr. Napoleon. They just really touch me. So one of the biggest barriers for me and my journey to leadership was just showing up. Because yesterday's panel, Women of Color Facing Challenges, it really provided me with a useful phrase. And so I'm going to reframe Dr. Angelica Garcia's idea about living in our intersectionality, quote, unquote. That spoke to me because number one, it was the fact that being in my intersectionality was used against me when I showed up. So there are these sectional kind of identities that I inhabit that really activate then structural racism and structural sexism that present formidable barriers to my career goals. So this Black scholar, Moya Bailey, coined the appropriate term. She calls it misogynoir. This is a particular type of virulent misogyny targeted at Black women. So that's a huge barrier. The second barrier, I think both Dr. Murillo and Dr. Napoleon alluded to it, and that's self-doubt. But along with that self-doubt for me was this insidious internalizing of other people's low to no opinion of my capabilities, of my training, my expertise, and the like. The third barrier for me, I believe, is my stature, being height challenged. And also my presentation as a very femme woman. I enjoy fashion. And I think that contributes to me being underestimated and even sometimes viewed as lacking in seriousness. But once I realized how throughout my entire life, my innovative work, my great ideas, my intersectional smarts, intellectual, I'm really kind of honing in on that term. My intellectual smarts were constantly being appropriated by other people, stolen by other people. I've been ripped off at each stage of my professional journey. So with that, I got over that self-doubt thing right away. Then I think many women can appreciate what I have experienced, being in a room, being in a meeting, hearing somebody say something that you expressed in a meeting that was ignored or devalued, only to hear some other person say the very same things you did, only slightly paraphrased, and that idea being championed as the best idea ever, not when it was coming from me, by the way. So I've had my own original scholarship, among other things, appropriated by other people to great benefit to them. So that, again, got me over the self-doubt. My authority as a leader has constantly been challenged, especially in white spaces. I've developed a DEI presentation with my new business, this presentation called "You're Not the Boss of Me, Black Women Leaders and the RESPECT Problem." And this is all about the microaggressions and macroaggressions, the implicit and explicit biases, and professional envy and sabotage that I, like countless other Black and other women of color, continue to endure. And so that's a whole story. Anyway, so I overcame these challenges by, again, living in my intersectionality and embracing my Blackness and my womanness. I can't change the fact that I'm 5'2". I won't change or apologize for my self-presentation as a femme woman who enjoys fashion and looking my best when possible. It's not always possible. I also overcame the challenges of having my work and ideas ripped off by, first of all, calling it out immediately and saying, "Didn't I just say that?" Or, "Yes, I thought that was a good idea when I raised that very point earlier." And by claiming and naming my work as mine. I also claim the use of my honorifics. So for example, I use Dr. Everett on my credit cards. I introduce myself as Dr. Everett. I insist that my undergraduate students call me Dr. or Professor Everett. And I don't get carried away with it, but I worked hard for that degree. And as a Black woman, it lends me some gravitas that too many people are loath to grant me. Finally, as a Black woman leader, what I've learned is to be the boss, I have to act like a boss, and I have to wield my boss power when necessary. And sometimes that means you have to say, "Yes, I am the boss of you." And remember, this is all about you don't have power if you don't use it. At the same time, you must use power properly.
Thank you so much for the advice. And I think it's super important what you said about the fact that we have to act like we are the boss in order to be the boss, actually. And thank you. That's really helpful. And yeah, thanks again. And now, Alibra, what are some of the most significant barriers you had to face in your career?
So the biggest one is myself. Because as I said earlier, I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. As I said earlier, I never believed that I was smart. Even though people thought I was smart, I never believed that. So yeah, myself, my insecurities, approval from others. I was doing everything to get approved by my dad. I struggle with being my authentic self. And I resonate with what you said, Dr. Everett, about the way you wear the clothes you wear. I love fashion. I love switching up. I usually change my hair every day. I just like to be different every day. And sometimes people think, "Oh, that's not appropriate. That's not professional." And oftentimes people back home, when they see my pictures, are like, "She's the president of student government. She doesn't look like it." And so I struggle with approval from others and myself. So yeah, so the second thing is really more international. I'm an international student. That's a big challenge because I have a Congolese passport, which is an African passport, even though I live in Belgium. But that's also a struggle because, for example, I cannot go home whenever I want because I have to apply for a visa every time I go out of the country, which is not appropriate and it's not easy mentally or at any point. So if I want to look for an internship, for example, to be a better leader, a better woman, I cannot do that because I'm an international student. And I struggle with that a lot because I would have opportunities a lot, but unfortunately I cannot because I'm an international student. The last thing was fear of the unknown, fear of others, and fear of being my authentic self. And last year in 2021, I said, it's okay, it's enough. I want to be my authentic self. I want to do what I want. I want to wear what I want. And I want to say what I want. So when I disagree with something, I say that openly. And of course, respectfully, I disagree. I'm sorry. And so yeah, being my authentic self was the key. That was my saving ticket, I would say, because I learned to be me. I learned to own myself, and I learned to correct people when Kabu Kapwa is not written well. It's K-A-B-U, K-A-P-U-A. So I always make sure to correct people when they mispronounce my name. And yeah, so I own me and I own myself, and that's really what I'm thankful for. And that helped me to go forward every day.
You're totally right. And thank you so much for sharing. And it's already 1:30 and we were supposed to still have a Q&A and all that, but yeah, I guess it won't happen. But Dr. Murillo, Dr. Everett, Dr. Napoleon, and Kabu Kapwa Kalombo, you are amazing. And I just want to thank you for all the things that you do at SBCC and even outside. And thank you for bringing your leadership to the community as well as a positive impact. And you're so inspiring. And this Zoom meeting really inspired me as well. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. And thank you for bringing us more knowledge, tips, and inspiration of how women lead today. And also thanks to everyone who joined the meeting. I wish you all a good day and a great rest of the week. Hoping you leave the meeting with an even better leadership character and with some of the great advice that we had today. And yeah, take care and see you soon.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
You too.